Hey everybody, it's Scotty from Scotty's Record Shop with my first video response, actually, video that I've ever made. And this one is for the for Shannon's 300 subs contest, for a 5, 10, 15, 20 contest. This is my third attempt at making this video. The first one, somebody knocked at the door. I was almost done. And second one, my laptop decided to do a Windows upgrade right in the middle of it. So let's try this again. First of all, an absolutely amazing thing to have 300 subs. I'm almost at 100, and I find that blows my mind. And by the way, if you're watching this, hi, subscribe please, and I'll subscribe back to you. But again, this is not about me. This is about Shannon, and her 300 subs worth. You deserve every single one of them. A really interesting concept for a contest too. Looking at albums 5, 10, 15, 20, in my case 45, so it goes up a little bit. And also, as we get towards the end of it, I'm going to kind of, I don't want to say cheat, but, well, you'll see. There's some CDs and stuff involved in this too. So anyway, let me put my mouse down and we'll plow through this. First of all, I want to say that I have always had a love for pop music. I mean, from some of my earliest memories is listening to AM radio in the late 60s and early 70s. I was 5, it was 1971. This is not a pop. It didn't get played much on AM radio, but my brother brought this album home, and then why this is significant for me is because when I heard it and heard just how heavy the drums were, it blew my mind. And the weird thing is one of the songs, When the Levee Breaks, might as well pull the album out since I'm talking about it, Led Zeppelin, fourth album, Led Zeppelin 4, 1971. When I heard When the Levee Breaks, for some reason I just started doing that drum beat. I didn't have a drum set. I'd never tried doing any kind of a beat or anything, and I just did it, and I can't explain how I did it. It kind of freaked my brother out. We had this A track going on, and all of a sudden I just, and I just never had done that before. And I realized I had an ability or a gift or whatever you want to call it to drum. And at that moment I really realized my love for music as well, I think. Anyway, so that was 71. 76, I have always been a huge Beatle fan. And even though this is not a Beatle album, I'm going to show a Beatle-related album, actually, for 81. But I wanted to go see Paul McCartney in Wings so bad in 1976. I lived in Maine back then. The closest McCartney was going to come was the Boston Gardens. I had this thing all worked out. I was going to go visit my grandparents who lived in Lawrence at the time. And they were going to drop me off at the Boston Gardens that night, and they did come pick me up later on. I was going to romp around the Boston Gardens as a 10-year-old by myself. You know what? That plan didn't go over really well with my parents. I can't imagine why. So I didn't get to see McCartney. The next concert, right about the same time, okay, great. I can't go see McCartney. Right in our local hometown of Lewiston, here, Kiss was coming for the Destroyer tour. And I was thinking, oh, goody, I'm going to go see Kiss. She's not going to say no to that. My mom said no. She said there's no way on earth you're going to go see a band that spits out fire and blood. Strikeout number 2. The Compromise was a really great concert. And it was a group called Seals and Crofts. Look a little bit like hippies on this album cover. This was the tour that they came for. The album was called Get Closer. Even though it's not their highest rated album, it's my favorite, probably because, I mean, we were playing it at the house at the time, and it was the first concert I ever saw, and it is a good record, but that's a memory from 1976 when I was 10. 1981, and here comes that the Beatle related, the album Tug of War. And the funny thing about this was when the single Ebony and Ivory came out, initially, two of my favorite artists, Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder, really, literally, probably my two favorite artists. And I'm ashamed to say this now, but at the time my reaction was, what's this? I was expecting a lot more. I don't know what I was expecting, guys, but and I've since. I mean, I love the song now. I understand it. I absolutely love this album. A great record. And I actually was playing this about a week ago, and as you can tell, this is kind of beat up. This is my copy from when I was, 15. And I need an upgrade. I realized I was playing this album, like I said, for the first time in probably 20 years, and it needs an upgrade. Okay, 1986. I had just gotten married, had moved to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I had married somebody who was completely blind. I'm visually impaired, so we were living in this housing project that was filled with disabled people. And the great part about it was, A, I was on my own for the first time. B, I was living with a bunch of people that I could really, really relate to, which was really helpful for me because I had kind of, for years prior to that, growing up, kind of had a pity party about my visual impairment and didn't really think I could do a heck of a lot, and, for whatever reason. And I get with all these people that are, I don't want to say worse off than me because maybe theoretically you'd look at them and say they were worse off than me, but they weren't. They really inspired me to get out and realize that being disabled means nothing. It's just another thing. Everybody's got a disability of some kind or another. So, and I learned that from them. The sad thing is, the sad side note about that is most of these people who were living there, who I grew very close to at the time, had disabilities which would eventually take their lives, which is sad, but I still have a lot of wonderful memories. The song, and there was a lot of really interesting music. MTV was really cooking at that point in time, and in '86. But the song, that whenever I hear this song, it just brings me back to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, the winter of '76, the Dream Academy, and life in a northern town. I mean, the record's great anyway, but that song just really, to this day, just brings back so many wonderful memories for me of whenever I hear it, I think of Betty's Dream Rainbow Apartments in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And my time there. So anyway, we go to 1991, and a slightly different. I'm in a different place. I had been partying quite a bit, and had trashed my life quite a bit, and decided that I needed to sober up. And actually, it was in '90, but by '91, '92, I was sober. But I'll tell you, I had a lot of anger issues, as some people who have gotten sober realize. You stuff a lot of things, and it starts coming out. So, and I'm going to throw this disclaimer in. I'm not saying that everybody that listens to some of these groups that I'm going to throw out are angry or have anger issues or whatever. This is where I was at, and I was relating to this music, and I connected to it because it just fueled my anger, I guess. But at the time, in the early '90s, I was listening to a lot of stuff like Body Count, NWA, Public Enemy, Pantera, or whatever, Metallica. I know these are groups that I'm not saying necessarily that everybody that listens to them have anger issues. It was just stuff. It was just something that I connected with that music, and I got to a point after listening to when Body Count came out. I remember listening to a song on there called "Mama's Gonna Die Tonight," and I was thinking. At first, it fed right into my anger, and then I got to a point though, where it was like, this is too far. This is too much for me, I remember Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name Of. I remember when that came out, and just at first was like really mega into it, and then realized, man, it was just, for me, it was just really feeding into my anger. And I just had to let a lot of that stuff go. So, I mean, I'm not showing anything from that era because I really don't have any of that stuff anymore. Okay? So, from that point, let me see if I can find it here. Yeah. From that point on, I did a total 360, or 180, I'm sorry, not 360, but 180. Went from just sobering up, being really, really angry, to trying to find solutions to that stuff in religion. Just the walk that I went through. And got a lot of good things out of that. I still struggle with that stuff at times. One thing that I got was some really nice music. I'm not a fan of contemporary Christian music, especially today. I think personally it just sounds fake. Just that's my personal opinion. I'm not pointing fingers. But one of the artists that I found that I had since got a chance to meet and hang out with a little bit, an incredible guitar player, a guy named Phil Keaggy. This is an album he put out actually in 1976. He's kind of he's an amazing guitar player, and he's got a voice similar to Paul McCartney. I talked to him about his love for the Beatles. He absolutely loved the Beatles. Grew up listening to them. He actually was discovered by Jimi Hendrix of all people, and was in a band called Glass Harp. If you want to see Phil Keaggy really rip it, look up Glass Harp on YouTube. And it's just the kid at the time, he was like 17, 18, 19 years old, and he just was an amazing guitar player. Rumor has it, and he said, I'd asked him this, he'd said that he'd never heard Hendrix say this, but somebody went to Hendrix and said, how does it feel to be the greatest guitar player in the world? And Hendrix said, I don't know, ask Phil Keaggy. Which sounds like something Hendrix would say, because he was a very humble guy. But anyway, if you get a chance to check out some Phil Keaggy stuff, go right ahead. That was where I was in 96. And moving on now to the 2000, the decade, the last decade. Around, I don't know, 2000, 2001, I was walking across this trestle, old abandoned train trestle, and I had headphones on, really stupid, but and I had an Al Jolson CD. I don't know why I picked this Al Jolson CD up, but and a lot of people know who Al Jolson is. Maybe you've seen the Jolson story, I'd seen it, but didn't really relate to it. I don't even know why I picked it up. But when I was walking across that trestle at that time, and that was the trestle where a lot of the immigrants had come into my neighborhood or come into my town, I just realized how wonderful, like pre-World War II music, and music that wasn't rock and roll, went before, before rock and roll really was, and for the last 10 or so years, it's not the only thing that I listen to, but I love discovering new things and about old music, as crazy as that sounds maybe. I just love discovering bands that I haven't heard of before, or artists that I haven't heard of before, whatever, and even going way back. An example that I pulled out that just summed the whole thing up is there's a record company called Archaeophone that does a lot of reissues of music that's all acoustic era. In other words, recorded basically before 1925. And they put out a lot of compilations and artists, I don't want to say best ofs, but collections. But they have this phonographic yearbook, and this is one of them. This is from the year 1915. Yep, 1915. And they really do an amazing job of finding really what was popular. I mean, people look back at that era, and you can think of certain groups, Louis Armstrong, stuff like that, where jazz cats want to connect to that stuff, and that's cool. But that's not the only thing that was going on. I discovered I've got a huge love for like Bing Crosby. Now, and you think of Bing Crosby and you think of, Christmas music, White Christmas, or maybe you've seen some of those road movies with him and Bob Hope. But Bing Crosby, prior to rock and roll, he was the biggest selling artist, the most popular artist of the first half of the 20th century. But most of the people that bought those records are no longer with us, so that music is kind of being lost. And I'm trying to rediscover that stuff. So that's kind of... Anyway, I've rambled much longer than I was hoping to. But that's kind of a brief overlook and my entry into Shannon'S contest. Again, congratulations. It's an absolutely wonderful thing. Like I said before, you deserve every single sub you get and every good thing that comes your way. All right. Until next time, everybody. Peace and love.